STP Motor Oil sits on every auto parts shelf in America, but the company that owns it makes batteries. Not oil, not lubricants, batteries. So who actually makes STP Motor Oil? We traced the full chain: 9 corporate owners, 2 FTC penalties, a $9 billion federal fraud indictment, and a contract manufacturing model that connects this bottle to the same refineries behind Mobil 1. The label doesn't tell you any of this. Welcome to Who Creates What. The information in this video is based on our independent research of public documents like safety data sheets and API registries. Manufacturer partnerships can change, and we are not sponsored by or affiliated with any brands mentioned. Always check your product labels. Here's what's actually happening with every bottle of STP you pick up off a shelf right now. Energizer Holdings. Yes, the Energizer Bunny Company acquired STP in November 2019 as part of a deal that pulled the entire auto care portfolio out of Spectrum Brands. That deal included STP, Armor All, and a handful of other automotive consumer products. But Energizer does not blend oil. They do not own a single lubricant production facility, not one. They function as a brand manager and product licensor. The actual oil, the physical liquid inside that bottle, is produced by third-party contract blenders who manufacture to STP's proprietary additive specifications. And those specifications matter, because the base stocks used in STP Motor Oil are Group 2 and Group 3 refined oils, the exact same Tier 1 supply chain feeding Mobil 1, Valvoline, and Castrol. Same refineries. Same raw material grade. The difference is the additive package. STP's additive chemistry is sourced from Afton Chemical, one of the largest specialty chemical suppliers in the lubricant industry. And here's a detail that most people miss. Afton Chemical has historical corporate ties to one of STP's own former parent companies. That connection isn't accidental. It's a legacy supply relationship built across decades of ownership transfers. Now, the current STP product line holds API, SP, and ILSAC GF6 certification. Those are not marketing phrases printed on the bottle to look impressive. That certification is independently audited by the American Petroleum Institute. It means the oil meets OEM requirements for most modern gasoline engines sold in the United States. That's the manufacturing reality in 2026. But to understand how a battery company ended up controlling one of the most recognized oil brands in America, you have to go back to where this whole thing started with 3 men and almost no money. 1953. Street Joseph, Missouri. 3 men, Charles Dwight Elliott, Jim Hill, and Robert Durth, filed incorporation papers for a company called Chemical Compounds. Their total startup capital was $3,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's roughly $35,000 today. They had one product, one formula: STP oil treatment, a viscosity modifier and anti-wear additive blend. The name stood for Scientifically Treated Petroleum. No motor oil line, no distribution empire. Just one can of additive sold to local auto shops in rural Missouri. 8 years later, in 1961, Studebaker-Packard Corporation bought Chemical Compounds outright. Under Studebaker ownership, the product was briefly marketed as Studebaker Tested Products, which gave the STP acronym a second meaning for a short window. Then the brand got a showman. Andy Granatelli was hired as CEO in 1963. This is the man who turned STP from a regional additive product into a household name. In 1964, Granatelli designed the oval logo you still recognize today and plastered it across the Indianapolis 500 uniforms, crew jackets, model cars, and millions of stickers handed out directly to race fans. He understood something most executives at the time didn't: brand visibility at the track translated directly to shelf sales. By 1966, STP had grown into a $43 million operation. By 1969, the company was listed on the New York Stock Exchange under ticker symbol STP. Richard Petty's car carried that oval logo for years. So did skateboards, guitar cases, and gym lockers across the country. The brand was everywhere. But who actually owned it was about to start changing fast, and the list of companies that held this brand will surprise you. From 1953 to today, STP has changed hands 9 times. Every single one of these is verified through SEC filings and state incorporation records. Watch this list closely. It started with Chemical Compounds in 1953, the original founding entity. Then Studebaker-Packard Corporation in 1961, when the automotive manufacturer absorbed the brand. S-Mark Incorporated picked it up in 1976 as part of a diversified conglomerate play. Then, in 1984, Beatrice Foods took ownership. Yes, a food and consumer products company owned your motor oil brand. Just 1 year later, in 1985, it moved to Union Carbide Corporation, the chemical manufacturing giant. First Brands Corporation acquired it in 1986 through a consumer products consolidation. In 1998, the Clorox Company took over. The bleach manufacturer owned STP for more than a decade. Then, in 2010, Avista Capital Partners gained control, operating through Armored Auto Group, which later folded into Spectrum Brands. And finally, in 2018, Energizer Holdings, the battery company, became the current owner. The answer is none of them. Not one. Chemical Compounds came the closest, and they were a 3-person startup with a single additive formula. What was being transferred in every one of these deals wasn't manufacturing capability, it wasn't oil chemistry expertise. It was brand equity built by Granatelli on racetracks, sustained by Petty on television, and maintained through 70 years of consumer recognition. The oil formula was secondary, the logo was the asset. And that distinction matters, because when you understand STP as a brand licensing operation rather than an oil manufacturer, what happened next makes a lot more sense. In 1974, the Federal Trade Commission opened an investigation into STP Corporation's advertising claims. The specific claim under scrutiny was that STP oil treatment reduces oil consumption by 20%. The FTC spent 4 years on this case, 4 years of proceedings, testimony, and document review. In 1978, STP entered a consent order, paying $500,000 in civil penalties. But the money wasn't the real punishment. The FTC required STP to include a corrective disclosure in all future advertising, a statement telling consumers that the Commission had found STP's performance claims could not be substantiated. Think about that for a moment. A federal agency forced a company to run ads telling its own customers that it can't back up what it told them the product does. And the story didn't end there. In 1995, a second enforcement action hit. Another set of unsubstantiated performance claims. Another penalty, this time $888,000. 2 separate decades, 2 federal actions, both for the same type of violation. The FTC compelled STP to publicly admit twice that its marketing outpaced its evidence. And the brand didn't just survive, it barely lost a step. Consumers kept buying, retailers kept stocking. The oval logo stayed on the shelf like nothing had happened. That pattern where recognition overrides accountability ran through STP's corporate history for decades, and it set the stage for what federal prosecutors did in January 2026. First Brands Group was the holding entity that operated STP's brand infrastructure in the years leading up to the Energizer acquisition. They managed the licensing, the distribution, relationships, and the supply chain logistics behind the scenes. In January 2026, federal prosecutors filed charges against the company's executive leadership wire fraud, bank fraud, and money laundering in connection with an alleged $9 billion scheme. That's not a typo, $9 billion. The charges are active federal proceedings as of February 2026. No convictions have been reached, but the indictment is public, filed by the U.S. Department of Justice, and the allegations are specific. Now here's where precision matters. The STP product currently sold under Energizer Holdings has regulatory separation from the First Brands entity named in that indictment. The oil in the bottle today carries valid API certification and meets current industry standards. But the pattern across 7 decades is structural, and it's worth seeing clearly. The brand Americans built 70 years of trust in has passed through a food company, a bleach manufacturer, a battery company, and a holding group now facing federal fraud charges. 9 owners, 2 FTC actions, 1 active federal indictment. Understanding that chain isn't panic. It's product literacy, the kind of information that should be printed right next to the price tag, but never is. So here are 3 findings from this investigation. On certification, STP Motor Oil holds API SP and ILSAC GF6 certification right now. It is independently verified and meets OEM specifications for most gasoline engines. The product is not counterfeit. It is not substandard. On manufacturing, the contract blending model means STP's base oil comes from the same Tier 1 refineries supplying the premium brands. As this channel's Kirkland and Supertech investigations showed, the label doesn't determine performance tier. The additive package and the certification do. On ownership, you now have the full corporate chain, the FTC record, and the federal proceedings. You can make a decision at the shelf based on documented facts, not brand recognition alone. That's what this channel exists to do. Now you know the full STP chain. But there's another brand investigation this channel just completed, and this one involves a product that quietly disappeared from shelves. Who actually made CarQuest Motor Oil, and why did the brand vanish entirely? That full breakdown is right here.